Okay, I'll get started here. Thank you guys so much. This is Congressman Aguilar. Just wanted to thank you all for joining us today. We're doing another version of the Inland Empire Small Business Town Hall. On this call, we want to continue the conversation that we had last time. Thanks again to those who joined us the last time around. We hope to answer some of your specific questions and to give you an update on the resources available for small business owners and independent contractors within our community. As a reminder, again, if you'd like to ask a question, please press 0. This afternoon, we're joined by Christopher Lorenzana, who's the Acting Director of the U.S. Small Business Administration, Orange County and Inland Empire District Office. We're also joined again by Godfrey Hines, Lead Economic Development Specialist, and Ron Galati, Lender Relations Specialist from Director Lorenzana's team. Christopher, Godfrey, and Ron will be available throughout this call and to answer your questions and to give you an update on what the agency is doing to help business owners here in our region. Just a quick background. Last call, I told everyone that I was very optimistic that we would get called back to D.C. and in a strong bipartisan way, we would pass additional resources for the Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancement Act. We did just that. The administration asked for $250 billion in new funding for small business relief. We went above and beyond that, added $310 billion for funding for Paycheck Protection Program for the PPP, and specifically added $60 billion of that, $310 reserved for small and medium-sized lenders. We also added new funding for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which is administered by the SBA, and as many of you know, is a low-interest loan to help businesses stay afloat that has a forgivable component with it as well. These will go a long way to keeping businesses stay afloat, but I want to be very clear that my job is to watch closely to make sure businesses in our community get the funding that they deserve. And my support for these programs will be tied to whether Inland Empire businesses start to see relief from these now 2 tranches of funding that Congress has stood up. There were some issues the last time around on how funding was distributed by some financial institutions and who some of the recipients of that funding was. And so I want to make sure we're making data-based decisions and that the funding is proportional to the regions that we serve. So as we move forward, we'll make sure that our community has access to the resources we need, and one way we do that is by hearing from experts and making sure that we get our questions answered. So now I'd like to turn it over to Christopher Lorenzana, the Acting Director at the U.S. Small Business Administration, Orange County Inland Empire District Office. Thanks so much for being here, Christopher.
Good afternoon. Again, thank you very much, Congressman Aguilar, and good afternoon to everyone on the call. As the Congressman mentioned, again, my name is Christopher Lorenzana. I'm the Deputy Director of the SBA office here in Orange County and the Inland Empire. Our office covers all 3 counties, and we're proud to serve the public. I'm joined on the call, I believe, by my colleagues Godfrey Hines, who is the Lead Economic Development Specialist for our office. And if Ron Galati is not on the line yet, he will be soon, who is our Lender Relations Specialist. And so the 3 of us are happy to join the call today and answer any questions that the audience might have. I'm happy to give, if you'd like, we can kick off with just brief overviews of the PPP and the EIDL program, the Paycheck Protection Program, and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, or we can get right into questions. As the Congressman mentioned, this is sort of the second tranche or the second round of funding for both of the programs. Our office has taken the lead pretty early on throughout the country in having daily phone calls for the past 3 weeks. The first 2 weeks, we were having 2 calls a day, simply to inform and educate the public in a timely and, more importantly, an accurate fashion because of a lot of misinformation, especially early on the program, especially PPP. And we've also been working very diligently to identify local community-based lenders that are accepting PPP applications with, as we've been calling it, very few hoops and hurdles. And because for us, as the Congressman mentioned, our main interest at this district office is to identify the resources that are available nationally and direct them to the Inland Empire and, of course, to Orange County, since we serve all three counties, and to get the help to the businesses that truly need it here in this region so that they can survive, recover, and then ultimately thrive and continue to power on this economy that we have. And so, Congressman, however you'd like to handle it, if we do a quick overview, or we can jump right into questions.
I think a lot of the folks on the call are familiar with the two programs, so I think we can just get straight into questions if you're okay with that.
Sure, absolutely.
Christopher, I just joined. This is Ron Galati.
Ron, thank you very much.
Hey, Ron, thanks so much for joining, and I think we have Godfrey as well. Are you there, Godfrey?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Congressman.
Thank you again for joining us. Why don't I kind of guide the discussion here, and I'll start first, and I'll direct them to Christopher, and then Christopher, if you want to ask for some expansion on the comments, then I'll let you direct your team.
Sure.
Let me start by asking what the current status of the EIDL program is. I know there were some kind of chronicled, hiccups in the program specific to the $10,000 forgivable, emergency advance portion of that. That shifted, as Godfrey, shared with us before, based on a per employee number. So can you tell us, is that still the direction where SBA is that's going to be capped at 10,000, or it could be lower based on your full-time count of employee? And then second to that is, are you accepting additional applications on EIDL? I noticed this morning it said that you were going to be processing what was in the queue, but no individuals were not able to access the application online as of this morning.
Yes, Congressman. And so that is our current understanding here at the local district office level, that with the additional funding that was provided by the new relief package from last week, that SBA will resume processing the EIDL loan and advance applications that are already in the queue on a first-come, first-served basis. We just had a call at 2 o'clock, and we had a disaster assistance PIO on, and that is his current understanding as well. We've seen sort of the tone shift from a week or two ago of, a lot of people asking for status checks on their EIDL applications to now people saying, okay, I've been contacted by someone from the SBA disaster office or to open up a new account in the portal where they can view the loan amount that they're being offered for this initial disbursement, to people saying, I've received the EIDL advance now, how can I use this funding, et cetera. The portal is currently closed to new applications, but the latest word that we received from headquarters is that portal is expected to open relatively soon, and I'm thinking in a matter of perhaps a day or two, where they will then be able to receive new applications. But I would just say that for the audience listening, if you have applied directly for the EIDL loan through COVID-19relief.sba.gov and you've received a confirmation at the end of that application process, so not an email, but a confirmation number at the end of that streamlined process in the portal, and if it begins with a number 3, then you're good to go. And quite honestly, there's nothing else to do for this loan and advance opportunity than to continue, please, to be patient. And I know that the disaster office is working quickly to get through all of the applications already in the queue.
Okay, thanks so much, Christopher. Our first question, we're going to go to Tim from San Bernardino. Go ahead, Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim from San Bernardino. I just wanted to talk to the congressman and ask, as a small business owner, and I have 10 businesses, and with rent, we don't have any income coming in, and these landlords, I understand they have obligations to pay rent as well too, but is there anything in terms of federal or ways for us to work with our landlords that, to have some leniency during this tough time? And what can we go about doing it?
Yeah, so you're specifically you're talking about kind of the business rent side of the program, and can you have assistance and help? And my understanding, and I'll ask Christopher to chime in too here. The PPP program was meant to capture some rent components of what you're going through. Now, a majority of it has to go toward retaining, 75% has to go toward retaining the full-time employees of your organization, but a portion of it can be used for rent, utilities, and other operating expenses. So it seems like, you may want to talk with whoever your financial institution is to see if that's an option for you. Congress hasn't, and I think you hit on something that's incredibly important, is some landlords may own the property free and clear. Some of them, it might be owned by a larger company. And so their flexibility and your landlord's flexibility is going to have to guide some of your discussions, but that's out of your hands. And that is, an upsetting part about where we are, right now is, I would imagine that if folks wanted you to stay in there and to continue to pay rent in the months and years ahead, they would be flexible with you now. But not every landlord operates that way. So I understand that point. Christopher, any other observations or thoughts?
Yeah, for this one, Congressman, I want to defer to Ron Galati, our office's lender relations specialist. He may have additional insight. As you mentioned, the 25% part of this forgivable equation in the PPP does allow for rent expenses. So, Ron, how about a little bit of additional insight on that part?
And that's true. The rent expense, interest on your mortgage for the building that you own or buildings you own, those are all covered. Anything of a non-payroll working capital, again, that's specific to the business. We could discuss any particular aspects or particular types you might have a concern about. Additionally, the idle loan, again, the PPP is kind of a very short window, talking about 8 weeks from the time of the disbursement to basically the payroll the requirement being met after 8 weeks. But in the case of idle, it's a little longer view. So in that case, hopefully you can get some relief through that program as well, where it can be a combination of payroll and working capital. It's probably going to primarily be working capital in the idle loan, and that would cover a lot of those business expenses as well.
I think a lot of folks, thanks, Ron. I think a lot of folks have concerns, too, and one of the things we hear quite loudly is, well, I don't have any customers. So, how am I supposed to take out a loan when I don't have any customers or any revenue coming in? So I think that's a lot of the apprehension. Is that fair that, Ron and Christopher, those are the things that you're kind of hearing as well?
Sure, absolutely. We've been doing these calls now for 3 weeks, and I think the high point, we had about 1,400 people on the call. And so on one of the calls, and absolutely that's one thing that came through loud and clear throughout the course of the 3 weeks. And one response that we've heard from headquarters when this sort of question was asked, and it seems simplistic, but I think that it's also it's in line with the spirit of the program, of the Paycheck Protection Program, is, yes, even if a business is not open, the idea was to protect the paychecks and to protect the payroll and the employee count of the business and keep the employees engaged while we are sort of sheltering in place for the most part here in California, and keep the employees engaged so that when we do begin to sort of reopen parts of the economy, that we have an engaged workforce that is ready and willing to jump right back into their roles. And so I know it seems maybe a little counterintuitive that, some businesses have asked, so are we expected to pay for employees that aren't doing something at the place of business? And sort of the short answer was yes, right? That's the point of the spirit of the program.
I appreciate it. Just a reminder for folks, we've got well over 100 folks on the call here. Press 0 if you have a question. We've got a bunch of questions in queue, and so we'll take the next one now. This is a common question we get a lot. LaShawn from Fontana. Go ahead, LaShawn.
Hi, yes, you already answered my question. I was wondering about checking my application status, but I got my confirmation number, so thank you.
And it starts with a 2?
It starts with a 3.
Okay. Yes. All right. So Christopher, it starts with a 3. They're fine, right?
Yes, that's correct, Congressman. So to the caller, if you have a confirmation number that begins with 3, really the truthful answer is sit tight. Please continue to be patient. Disaster office will reach out to you. The next step for you, if you haven't already received the EIDL advance, and by the way, that would just be a direct deposit into your account. The feedback that we're getting from businesses is that it'll literally just say, like maybe Treasury and then the amount for the advance. The next step after that would be an email from the disaster office. Be sure that we're not getting scammed. So look out for that .gov email ending, and they will be inviting you through a link to establish an account in the portal. And then once you're in that portal, that's where you'll see sort of the status of your loan offer for the initial disbursement, as well as a way to verify your account. And then that's getting the ball really down the road for your actual EIDL loan.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Next, we'll go to Kathy in Redlands. Go ahead, Kathy.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my call. I am a property owner and operator of a business. I have no employees, but I do have independent contractors. They are not on payroll. We are all 1099s. What do you have in the PPP? Is there something available for my situation? I have a mortgage, but it's a line of credit. What can you do to help me and the other 1099s, no employees?
Sure. So, Ron, I think this
ahead,
is a great one. Oh, I'm sorry, Congressman. I defer to you on the.
No. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. Ron, I think this is a great spot to talk about the new document that we received about how to calculate loan amounts for the PPP. So, again, these are documents we can make available to the audience. I can get that to your staff, Congressman, and they can share it with the group. But absolutely, there is an avenue for assistance for a business as described. Ron?
Yes. So independent contractors will submit their own PPP application. The similar way, very simplistically, but the simple example would be, again, taking a 12-month average, most recent 12 months or 12 months of 2019. That's going to be your basic premise for the calculation of your loan amount, multiplying by 2.5 times. That will give you your loan amount, provided you haven't had an EIDL loan, which then would be brought back into your PPP loan. But the short answer, certainly independent contractors on the 1099 will, have that information available, so they'll submit that to the lender, and the lender will get that process started.
Guys, I also read some guidance on your website that says if you have independent contractors who are working a significant amount, for you, that they're encouraged to do their own PPP, and not to be included in yours. Is that the guidance as well?
That's correct. In fact, businesses should not put their independent contractor 1099s in their payroll calculation. That does have to go through separately by filing with the independent contractors to file on their own.
Got it. Okay. Next, we'll go to Daniel Janung in Redlands. Go ahead, Daniel.
Thanks.
Daniel Janung, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'm here, sorry. So I had originally reached out to several banks, and our banking is with Chase. It actually was a local home savings that was bought by WAMU that was bought by Chase. And so I got an update from them saying that your loan is in process. But I also watched an interview from their CEO that said, they've got about $50 billion on this round. And we were told, I was told that it was capped at 10%. And so what I'm wondering is, because I'm with a big bank like that, I was also told once you apply, and I did the first day, don't apply again because it'll cause issues if there's multiple applications out there. So what I'm trying to figure out is, is there really a 10% cap on these banks, and does it not matter the size of business, anything, it's just they're only going to get X amount? And if that's the case, can we then apply, should we go to another, somewhere else to apply now or once we hear that? Or I'm in the point where I don't have, payroll for 3 days from now. And we've been waiting for a couple of weeks. And of course, nobody's doing business loans. And so we're stuck. Haven't even seen a response on the EIDL one that we submitted, 3 weeks ago at the same time. So just not sure what we should be doing.
Christopher?
Yes. So I think this is a case that we're hearing a lot. And Ron, I want you to chime in here because you've been leading these calls that we've been doing. But I guess the recommendation has changed, right, over the course of the first round of PPP to what we're seeing now as also like reality, right, on the ground here. And so I personally would absolutely recommend that a borrower or a potential applicant for PPP look to apply at a different lender if they feel that their application hasn't gained any traction at their current lender. And so one of the first things that our office took the lead on, and I think very early on nationally, was to personally call the executives of our community lending organizations and ask them just a straight question, right? This was a quick phone call, which was, are you open for PPP business for new applicants without a lot of hoops and hurdles, yes or no? And when we got the answer in the affirmative, we placed them on a simple spreadsheet, PDF, that we then placed on our website and we shared with the audience on our calls. And as soon as we started to get feedback, so that list was always, say, maybe 8 to 12 lenders in the area. And then once we started to get feedback from the public that those lenders were now not so easy to submit applications with, we simply removed that lender from the list. And so we curated this list of lenders that were active in PPP at that time. And so we still have that list. We've added to it now fintech lenders, which to my knowledge are, they're accepting these applications in sort of like an aggregate form or loan broker form, and they send it out nationwide to PPP lenders until there's a hit for that application. And so we've been seeing some good traction, some good feedback from businesses on that. Now, I just want to touch on the cap that was mentioned about the 10%. So from our latest understanding is that there was a cap implemented by I guess, SBA and Treasury on all lenders to limit it to 10% of the appropriated funds for both of these rounds. So essentially, it comes out to a $60 billion cap on every lender in the country. And so in order to make it more equitable, right, and to ensure equal access for all lenders and for all borrowers throughout the country. On top of that, there was $60 billion out of the 310 that was set aside for smaller lenders with in two sort of columns, one with assets from 10 to 50 billion, and then for lenders with under $10 billion in assets, they each had a $30 billion pot to draw from. Again, to ensure that even smaller lenders have capital that they need to make loans to their customers. Ron, any other insight that we want to add to that?
Christopher and Ron, can you talk briefly, since we were talking about the large institutions? There's a question on here from someone who heard concerns about Wells Fargo. And obviously Wells Fargo is a little different. They are a big guy, but they do have some additional limitations that the Federal Reserve put on them. Can you talk a little bit about experiences and what we're hearing from Wells directly on are they able to process these? If someone is a Wells client, should they look to another institution as well?
I was in touch with somebody from Wells last week, I believe it was Thursday, and they were continuing to take applications. I did not hear of any halt. There was a period early on where they did feel they were in a risk position, didn't have the commitment they had on federal funds that they were looking for, and that got cleared out, and that's not, I understand, not an issue at this point. There is a $250 billion cap, and the remaining money, like Christopher had said, the 60 carved out for the small to mid-sized banks. That's still an awful lot of money, but there's an awful lot of people in that queue. So to Christopher's point, there are many potential borrowers that are looking at another resource. We have some fintech companies on our list. I know we had approximately 6 of those, and I've heard that Cabbage is basically stopped right now. They're in a halt position, but there are several others on that list as other options.
Great. I appreciate it. Let's go to the next one. Duncan Miles in Redlands. Duncan, go ahead.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I had a similar question. First of all, I'd just like to say I feel that the process is flawed in a sense that the funds, there's no basis on need, and there doesn't seem to be an equitable mechanism to distribute the funds equally. Having said that, I understand that, how this was put together on an urgent basis. I am a Wells Fargo customer. My experience was I applied the second that I could on the link that was provided through Wells Fargo. I then was on a queue to submit an application. I was on that queue until the day before the money ran out, and then that queue, they sent me a link that I could complete an application. They never confirmed that application was ever submitted. I now continue to get emails that application may or may not be submitted, that they're getting ready for the SBA to review it. I checked with 7 other local lenders in our community. None of them are currently accepting any more PPP applications. These are lenders, local small business with capitalizations of, $10 billion to $50 billion, that actually know people that have received funding. I spoke to people at Wells Fargo or a local branch, and at least 2 bankers have told me they don't know anybody at Wells Fargo at our local branch that's received any funding. So my question is, how are we going to, for my example, small businesses that are going through large banks, how is there any mechanism for us to, I understand you're saying there's people out there that are still accepting for smaller lenders, but my experience has been that none of them are accepting any further applications, and I just don't know how we're going to make it through with a large bank. Thank you.
Sure, thanks. Let me start with this one, Christopher, because I'm going to say some things that you might not want attributed to you. I appreciate the question, and I think that's one of the reasons why we have to be incredibly cautious and mindful moving forward. It's one of the reasons also, Duncan, that we didn't just add $250 billion into PPP 2 weeks ago. We wanted to make sure that there were additional carve-outs for those smaller institutions, under $50 billion in assets. But to your broader point, we need to see that some of these larger banks are putting these PPP loans out on the streets in the Inland Empire. I've heard a couple examples of folks, and I've talked to people who have received them from larger banks and smaller institutions, but we need to see them in a much larger clip from what I would say are kind of the big guys, the big banks in our communities. There's definitely a lot of anecdotal evidence and a lot of people talking that maybe those larger banks prioritized their larger customers, those that owe them money, because it would be it would better ensure that they were going to get paid. So those are some of the concerns and what give people pause about these types of programs. And so that just means, we need to be diligent. We need to ask these questions. We need to make sure that these PPP loans are going to our communities. We need to see the zip code data on where this goes. And so we continue to push Treasury and SBA National on seeing more of that data. Anything else, Christopher, on some of the concerns you guys are hearing about, again, some of the larger institutions?
I think I would just leave it at well said, Congressman. And Ron, do you have any insight that you wanted to add?
No, I think I wouldn't disagree. I'd like to see more information as well, and I think what we've seen so far is a summarization for California on the PPP and some information on EIDL as well. But to drill down, hopefully that information is going to be available at some point. But again, I think the banks generally are processing such that they've received your application, indicating that's the case. They're processing the application to where it is underwritten and approved, otherwise declined, and they should be giving you feedback on that at that stage. When it gets to the stage where it's going through to SBA, which now that the window's back open, it was closed for a while, they ought to have an SBA authorization number. So if you do get a chance to contact them, they ought to give you an authorization number. Once you have an SBA authorization number, that indicates that that money is earmarked for you. And 10 days hence, the lenders are supposed to submit the disbursement to you. So that's kind of the rules of the road. Some people are all into a big backlog, so therefore some of this paperwork may not be coming out or emails may not be coming out in a timely manner. So I would encourage you to look at another option for sure. I mean, if there's something you want to protect yourself, maybe that's something you want to do. To your point, we do have a list of those lenders. I'm not sure which list you tried or how many people you tried, but I don't know. We could share that some way with the congressman, so it's available. Providing a link or otherwise to take a look at those. You can also reach out to me.
Yeah.
You can also
you guys have said that as well and shared that information. So we appreciate it, and we can make sure that we send out that list of approved regional institutions with capacity, which is what we've asked for that you sent. We can make sure that we're sharing that with the folks on the call. So I appreciate it. Let's go to Mike in Grand Terrace, but don't worry, Christopher. I'm going to give you opportunity to let people know your email and contact for you and the team if they have some follow-up too.
Sure.
Mike in Grand Terrace, go ahead.
Well, hello. Thank you for including me in on the call. I just got a couple questions. I'm going to start out by talking about unemployment. I own a restaurant, and when I was informed that we needed to close, I immediately laid off my employees so they could take advantage of unemployment and earn some income. And then they came out with a $600 plus what you were getting on your unemployment, which is great for the employees. But one of the things I'm seeing now is it's hard to get them to come back to work. Now, we tie that into the PPP loan, which hopefully I get. I'm in the queue, so I'm excited about that. But the way I understand the PPP loan works is you have, I think it's 60 days to use 75% of it to bring back your employees. And the calculations were 2.5 times your monthly payroll. So one of the questions I have is, if we don't open till, let's say, May 15th, they allow us to open. And certainly they're going to allow us to open with social distancing. So every other table, let's say, for example, is able to open. I'm probably only going to be able to bring back half my crew. So what's the solution to that, or is there one?
Well, I think it's certainly your trade-off. I understand what you were doing with your staff, trying to give them unemployment compensation. They have some form of income. But the way the role of PPP is that at the point when when the disbursement occurs, if your bank approved that loan and the amount of money going out to you that day is the day we're looking for having all that staff that you had pre-injury level back up to staff, back up to levels, and the costs would be correlating to that. And the forgiveness will be benched off of that. Now, it doesn't say that you may have 1 or 2 people that just don't want to come back from unemployment, and they want to come back. You're going to have to look at that and document that information when you go to submit. The bank will ask. There's a form that they'll be required to submit, doing some certifications and asking you for documentation of that payroll expense and those payroll and those employees that were on board. That's the way the process will work. And again, I think the extent that unemployment, I do think that the PPP program allows for contributions to retirement fund, your employee health care, and those kinds of expenses that are part of that whole package. So it does help, I think, your employee from that standpoint. When it comes to continued revenue at a reduced level, they would still have the option, of course, going out onto unemployment compensation at that time.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. I had one that also came up that I wanted to get to. An individual who's, I think, on this call now said that they were told by their bank that their application has been held up by the SBA because they had a previous SBA loan. They had a loan, the individual said, 30 to 40 years ago, but it's been paid off for a long time. So are there any prohibitions on utilizing the program based on prior SBA status and having a SBA loan in the past?
The one that I can think of is anyone currently delinquent or defaulted within the last 7 years on a direct or guaranteed loan from SBA or other federal agency would be ineligible. That's the key one there. And of course, we have a certain statement as well that covers any in the last 5 years any owner that's been incarcerated, on probation, on parole, been convicted of a crime, that portion, those clearly are those exclusions when it comes to eligibility.
Sure, but if there was no delinquency and it was, paid more than 7 years ago, there shouldn't be any reason for it being held up outside of the owner conduct issue that you mentioned.
No, that should not be the case. Yeah. If you have an SBA loan right now, or a 504, 70 or 504, that wouldn't preclude you as well from receiving that. In fact, we have a deferment program, we have a payment program in place right now that will actually pay. If you have a 7A loan or a 504 loan, will pay 6 months of principal and interest on that particular loan, on your particular loan.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go to.
Yeah. No.
Let's go to.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Congressman, but no, absolutely. That having a loan decades ago from the SBA, so long as it's all completely paid off in full, that's absolutely not an obstacle. One thing I want to bring out is that the SBA, again, we've delegated authority out to the lending community to accept and approve these PPP loans, and they are simply submitting to the SBA system in order to generate an SBA authorization number back out to the lender. And at that point, that begins that countdown, that 10-day countdown to first disbursement.
Got it. Okay. Appreciate it. Let's go to Omar in Rancho Cucamonga, and I think this is related to some of the forgiveness portions as well. Go ahead, Omar.
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering, as a sole proprietor, what needed to be documented and shown for the PPP to be forgiven? Is it just based off 2018 tax returns if you haven't filed 2019, or, how does that work?
Sorry,
Christopher?
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry about that. I can start with this anyway, and that is, they're going to look for, the lender's going to look for documentation that supports that payroll for that period of, again, the disbursement, the bank having made that disbursement, and the 8 weeks moving forward. The documentation, as you're going to submit as well when you first take the loan out, you're going to want to have that same documentation of payroll and document the number of people you have during that period. Sometimes it's a Form 941. You can pull from that, but it's kind of the same format. But clearly, whatever your payroll system can provide, that's important to have. In addition to those non-payroll working capital expenses, you want to be able to document those as well. So that'll be all asked for at the end of the 8-week time frame.
Okay. Let's go to Angela in Redlands.
Yes, hi. This is sorry, it's Angelina.
I'm sorry, Angelina.
Hey. That's okay, Pete. Or Congressman, sorry. I just wanted to ask a question. I have owned a business in the city of Redlands for 19 years and have been self-employed as an independent contractor. And all the banks that I have called and even getting on originally to apply, because I don't have a business bank account, they're denying me. So I'm wondering if there are financial institutions that are out there to help the independent contractors that are small but still, support their families in order to be able to get some kind of assistance. Because every bank I've called, even 2 of my own and a handful of others, are completely denying me and not even allowing me to fill out an application.
Again, I believe Christopher is going to make available to the Congressman and to the distribution the list that we have currently. I'm not saying all these folks are still taking applications. As of last week, they were. There's also a group of fintech companies, of which I know one is not taking apps right now, but there's a group of 7 on that list. So I would hope you'd find someone in that group. We're going to be adding and continuing to add to that list. I have a note that's going to go out to the lenders, and we're going to try to find additional those that can be added and those that need to be taken off based on their response.
Just to add a little bit.
Yeah, let me just jump in
Sure.
here. I think what we're hearing too is, these are some of the small small businesses who don't have the sophisticated kind of relationship and instruments, and I think that we're going to see a lot of that in the Inland Empire. So in your conversations, Christopher, with some of these institutions of all sizes, I think just kind of conveying that as well, that just because someone doesn't have a business account with a $200,000 line of credit doesn't mean that they can't participate in the program, and the program is specifically meant to include anybody, including these independent contractors who may not have those sophisticated relationships. Go ahead, Ron. I think I was interrupting you.
No, I feel exactly the same way. I think there should be lenders that will take those applications, and I certainly, when I talk to these lenders that are on the list directly about that, they were basically saying, yes, we do that. We may ask for them to establish a checking account with us because we think it's the best way for us to manage the money and put the money out into their account, but they didn't have any qualifications other than that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Ron. That was part of our questioning when we made contact with the lenders. So what sort of this hoops and hurdles line, some would say, we're not asking for anything other than if we're able to, make a PPP loan that they would, consider opening up an account with our institution. I think that's one way for, a local lender to sort of earn that business. But just pulling back a little bit, I think that it might be a good idea also to consider, because we've seen this even with some businesses close, sort of like family-related businesses where they have not had that business account, and again, sort of like a simple business checking account, that it might be better, because in conversations with lenders, we're seeing that, especially for like sole proprietors that may simply take draws, like take some money from the business and then just transfer it over to their personal account. Some lenders were not accepting that as part of payroll, even though business owners, many, that's absolutely how they, live, right? Pulling the money from the business. But just for sort of from a lending perspective, lenders seeing that maybe it's just for clarity purposes better to have a business account. And then I think it can help the business owner down the line too, as we continue to establish sort of these more formal business practices that will help them when they speak to someone like a lender.
That's a good point. Thanks.
Congressman, I've just emailed that list of lenders and the link to our box at Santa Ana District Office. I've emailed that to Miss Andrea.
Okay, you got it, and we will share that with Angie and others who were on the call. Next, let's go to Quiglu. Is that from Upland? I'm sorry, I might be getting that name off. Go ahead, your line's open.
Oh, thanks for taking my call. So basically, our case is very special. Our company is located in Upland and also in the field of medical device. We moved back our joint venture from China to California, started this year. So we haven't set up a payroll program. So in such a case, without a payroll program, could we apply for a PPP loan? So this is my question.
I'm not sure I followed all that, but let me say this about the employees that are in the situations there. Their parent company may be owned by a foreign entity. The only requirement on citizenship is that only employees whose primary residence in the United States are eligible for consideration in the payroll. So there's.
I think he was also trying to say, it's a relatively new business that has maybe moved as well. And so can you talk to me about what PPP requires from a month of payroll, and looking back and how they do their calculation? What should they look at? I think before you talked about their 2019 taxes, but what if a business was created in October, November, December of last year? What can they use as their calculation in order to access PPP?
Well, again, if they're going to do a tax filing of some, say if they're going to do their Schedule C, then they would want to complete that, have that available, even though it's a short, whatever the number of months were last year. But importantly as well, the documentation of what their payroll has been pre-injury level. I think their injury date is February 1st. So going from February 1st onward, the expectation is there was some injury during that period. So prior to that deadline, say January 31st, what was their payroll? Can they substantiate the payroll expense for a period of time as a basis for calculating the average payroll cost? Again, I would the lender should be astute at this and be able to cut to the chase as to what they're going to need.
And I think, Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think February 15th, 2020 is sort of that, I guess, date of establishing whether or not there was a business in existence for PPP purposes, correct?
Correct. That's a good point.
So we absolutely, the lender can absolutely take into account seasonal business, new business, 3 months only of business, all of those kind of things. They can take that into account to calculate payroll costs.
And if someone's lender isn't allowing them to use one of those metrics, if someone's lender is saying you're too new or maybe misinterpreting some of that guidance, then they should look at their options for approaching someone else to file the PPP and maybe do their business. Is that fair, guys?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do, we'll make this the last one. I want to respect everybody's time, and I told the director we'd be punctual here. Let's do Trina in Redlands. Go ahead, Trina.
Yes, hello. Thank you for taking my call.
Go ahead. Of course.
Okay. Yes. Well, I own a salon in Redlands, California, and so I have contractors, independent contractors, who pay me rent. I only have one person on payroll, which would be myself, because I am an S corporation. My needs are, I don't need payroll, but what I need is money for my lease and operating expenses. So my contractors pay me. So these other loans, I did sign up on the SBA for the EIDL and the PPP. Chase Bank would not let me complete the application without the EIDL funds, which I did not get any. So my concern is, how do I pay my overhead? And if I don't need payroll, but I need money for paying the lease.
That's a good question. So let me summarize, and I'll let Christopher and Ron weigh in. But you don't have that huge chunk of payroll. You have a lot of independent contractors who pay you rent, but you still obviously have to satisfy the rent and obligations and business expenses, but they may not be as neat as the 75% to 25% payroll to overhead piece. Get any guidance, Christopher and Ron, on what someone in this position should look at?
Well, first and foremost, I would look at the EIDL, and I don't know if you said that you weren't approved for that. Is that what you said on the EIDL?
She did indicate that, yeah.
Okay. Well, I would really like to ask customer service to provide what information they can as to why she wasn't approved, so you have a basis. If it was something to do with credit, then that can be explored further. You can resubmit those applications after you provision to make that credit check or the correction. And then again, you have to make sure you know what the reasons are. That's clearly where you can go from there, because I haven't heard of, I heard maybe of a couple that have been denied an EIDL loan, but the vast majority have been approved. I think that is the place where you want to take more of your working capital, non-payroll type expenses to utilize that medium.
Great. Appreciate it. You know what? Why don't we, we'll take maybe two more questions, but right now, why don't I have Ron and Christopher give their contact information at this point in case folks do have to jump off. If there's any follow-up that individuals have, if you're on the phone and we don't get to your question, you can feel free to leave a voicemail as well. Stay on the line and leave a voicemail, and we'll get back to you. And to follow up on Angelina's question, we're going to post that list that Godfrey and SBA are sending. We're going to post that list directly on our website, aguilar.house.gov, under the COVID section, which is on that front page. So we'll just post that list in whole and total, in addition to emailing it out to the list of folks who we know have signed up and joined on the call. Christopher and Ron, do you guys want to run through your contact information in case folks want to reach out directly?
Sure. This is Ron. Great, Christopher.
Thank you, Ron. Yes, so our main line number to the office is 714-550-7420. We have a team of district office employees taking those live calls throughout the day. If we don't answer, please leave a message, and that voicemail goes out to a number of team members. My email address is Christopher, just regular spelling, Christopher.Lorenzana, LORENZANA @SBA.gov. And Ron will give his email, but I want to quickly also point out that you can follow us on Twitter, where we're putting sort of our latest updates at SBA_OCIE. And then I would invite everyone to visit our district page, and halfway down the page is a place for email updates where you can sign up to receive our updates through email. And our district office page is simply sba.gov/ca/Santa. Ron?
Yes, my telephone number is 714-560-7450, and my email is Ronald, RONALD, period, GALATI @SBA.gov. So Ronald.GALATI @SBA.gov. I would strongly suggest emailing me, because it's once we get so many calls, it's very difficult to get back to someone. When I have an email, I can do it in the evening and send you some information that way. And thank you. Thank you, Congressman, and thank you to all the audience to being on this call. And certainly we want to help all of our businesses. We've been doing a lot of this, whether we do our webinars or calls on a daily basis, and we're anxious to help you.
And I want to also recognize Godfrey Hines, again, who is our district office's lead economic development specialist. He spends a lot of time in San Bernardino County, and so we really asked him to help take the lead on advocating and informing the businesses in that region. Godfrey, would you like to share your email and your number?
Yes, Congressman. My email is Godfrey, GODFREY .Hines, HIN, D as in David, S as in Sam. My telephone number is 714-560-7441. And Congressman, I wanted to mention that if you are not pressed for time, we still have some time that we can be here and answer a few more questions if you would like.
I appreciate it. You guys are being incredibly generous. So we're going to take a couple more questions, and I really appreciate that. And just so folks also have our number in the district office, we're answering calls remotely, 909-890-4445. And I think folks know how to reach out to us. Aguilar.house.gov is our website as well. Why don't we take Denise in Redlands? Go ahead, Denise.
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking my call. What I wanted to know is I had to lay my people off on March 13th, and they've been on unemployment. And if I do get this PPP loan, do I bring them back as of March 13th and pay them as if they were working, and then we pay the unemployment back, or do I hire them back the day I get the loan?
That's a good question, Christopher.
You do the latter.
There you go.
When you receive your disbursement, that really starts the clock, the 8-week clock. So from that point on is what the expectation is. You're going to pay that staff, those number of staff at the pre-injured level of staff at the average payroll cost that you've defined, and as well as document any amount of the 25% you can pay for non-payroll, those non-payroll working capital expenses. Make sure you keep a document of that as well.
So in this scenario, guys, she would look at her employee count March 13th or March 12th, the day before she had to lay people off, and then once the PPP loan was funded, once she received it, not necessarily approved, but once it was funded, that starts the clock for the 8 weeks, and then she can bring folks back moving forward. Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair. You bring them back as quickly as possible.
Got it. Okay. We'll get to Larry next. I did want to. I see a question in the queue here, and it isn't anything related to our folks here at SBA, but I did want to just make a quick point. We've been told when it comes to unemployment insurance that sole proprietors, the information in the portal specific for sole proprietors, if individuals are going to apply for unemployment, they are allowed under the CARES bill. California took a little bit of time, a little bit more time than we wanted, but that information in that portal is supposed to be up and live tomorrow. So again, that is not an SBA issue. That is a state of California unemployment issue, but we've been told that portal will be open tomorrow, the 28th, for folks who are sole proprietors, self-employed, to file for the disaster, the expanded unemployment as well. So appreciate everybody's patience, and it's still related to the business theme, and wanted to give people that information. Next, we'll go to Larry in Loma Linda. Go ahead, Larry.
Yes. Am I on?
Yeah, you're on, Larry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Congressman, and thank you for working so hard for us. We definitely need it out here. My question has to do with the cutoff on the credit side of things. Obviously, when we went into this, some of us kind of even seen it coming, and we immediately crunched down on hard, cold cash, because as any small businessman knows, cash flow is your lifeblood. So in doing so, though, that dropped our credit rating. So what is the standard or their cutoffs for the credit rating for getting the PPP?
Do you mean EIDL or PPP? Or you just...
PPP. Well, I do one, actually. I've applied for EIDL. I have a 3 in front of it, but I haven't heard anything. I've applied for PPP through Chase, and all I heard from them is fat chance. There's 100,000 people before you. Even though I applied on that day that we were allowed to, on the 10th, they still said even on the second wave, don't count on it.
Well, in PPP, some lenders are running credit, and some lenders, frankly, are not. We've given them the authority to basically underwrite those loans for the information that they're presented to them or information they need to gather from you. We don't really know. I don't really know the cutoff score for that. Quite frankly, I haven't heard of anybody being turned down on that loan for credit. On the EIDL loan, we do have a hurdle. I'm also not privy to that, but we've had very few that were turned down. When the CARES Act came in, that they basically mandated that credit threshold be dropped significantly.
Yeah, and let me just also say, appreciate the question, but one of the reasons why, we made this so expansive on the CARES Act and over $600 billion for these programs for EIDL and PPP over 2 rounds is exactly to the kind of, to Larry's question here, is to make sure that it touches every community, irrespective of credit score. And we do that, just so folks on the call know, we do that by allowing the financial institution, by taking all of the liability off of their books, and this doesn't even have to show up on their balance sheet if they don't want it to. So they could package these loans or sell them back individually and slide them over to use the Federal Reserve. So that takes it was created in a way that reduced the liability of banks, so we could have more folks qualified. So folks like Larry, wouldn't have to worry what their credit score was, and so that's that's one of the frustrations that we're having moving forward is I do think businesses are being told, well, I don't know, you might look risky here, and as you mentioned, guys, not every lender is checking the credit scores because they aren't required to, and these may not even stay on their books longer than a few weeks. So that's one of the things that we're watching. But it sure sounds like folks need to be thoughtful as they establish that relationship with their financial institution and PPP, and be willing to try to find someone else to file for them if they aren't getting the right answer. All right, let's do Joe from Rancho Cucamonga. Go ahead, Joe.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my call. My concern is related to the announcement that after the second wave of funding was announced, that the Treasury Department was going to be limiting loans that larger banks would be able to give out ostensibly, so that more money would go to smaller underserved areas. The problem is lots of small businesses do business with large banks. I do business with U.S. Bank. I applied 32 minutes after U.S. Bank made the application available online, which happened to be 4 days after the loans became available through Treasury to begin with. By the time I got my first response from U.S. Bank on that initial application, the money had already ran out. I've been told on 4 emails every single day since then, my application is in queue and is ready to be submitted automatically when the program opens back up. I'm still waiting for confirmation now that it has been submitted. But what has me concerned is that there seems to be a ridiculous idea that if we punish banks who funded large businesses to begin with by cutting them off, that somehow we're serving the community overall, when what the requirement should have been was something related to company size to begin with. So now as a small company, I have 12 employees, all of whom are hanging by a thread waiting for their payroll to be reinstated. I am now part of a bank that ostensibly, according to the Treasury Department, shouldn't be allowed to make any more loans because of its market cap. And I just can't understand I just can't understand how that could possibly be anybody's thinking or requirement for this.
Sure, yeah, and I can't speak for Treasury here. I understand the guidance, and Christopher may want to add some comments here too. But my feeling is that Treasury was hearing loud and clear from folks. We know that there are thousands of people in your shoes who have 10, 12 employees and are served by one of these large 10 banks in the country. But what we want to make sure you have the same opportunity as that sole proprietor, as well as that business with 490 employees. And it sure seemed anecdotally that some of the large companies got helped out by the big banks, more than the little guys. And like Ron mentioned before, some of the data that we have, it's very limited, but it showed that the average California PPP loan was, I think, $295,000 as an award. But what I'm hearing from businesses is that their requests are much, much lower than that, and so we need to make sure that these come to all segments of the community. While not, it isn't meant in a way to be punitive to the large banks. It's meant to ensure that it is getting to every corner of the community. But I understand your frustration, and we can convey that, and we'll continue to look at the Treasury guidance moving forward. But as Christopher and Ron mentioned earlier, there are other CDFIs and other institutions who now have access to separate buckets of PPP loans that may be a good fit moving forward if you don't hear back positively from U.S. Bank. Anything else on that one, Christopher or Ron?
Yeah, I know Ron's going to add some things, but Ron, just indulge me for a moment, please. I mean, Congressman, you said a lot of just completely accurate things there. I think all I would want to add is just that, again, for round one, it was one of these things where in 14 days, that 14 years worth of SBA loans, let's say, or business was done, right? Literally in 14 days, 14 years worth. And there were learnings from that first round that, as you mentioned, Congressman, that Congress implemented with saving some of the funding for the smaller lenders. And it's one of these things where the program was being built initially just, again, with the passage of the CARES Act and the signing. It was sort of like, here, a very monumental task that put SBA right at the forefront of a massive economic recovery effort. And so we continue to learn, and headquarters continues to adjust in concert with Treasury, the guidelines of the program. And it's one of these things where nothing will fully satisfy any one party, right? So you have, if you say we're going to allow for expedited batch processing of applications from big lenders, so that those businesses that do business with the big lenders can get through, then you've got the smaller lenders and credit unions upset. And then if you reverse that, then you've got the borrowers, as this caller just mentioned, who a lot of small businesses do business with the big banks. Now those folks are waiting for the credit unions and the smaller lenders to, put their loans in one at a time. And so it's sort of this thing of like, how do we satisfy both needs? And we're headquarters is trying to do that and communicate to the lenders as much as possible. And sort of we had this thing that they've called pacing the application process into the SBA system to allow for a more equitable access from all of the lenders around the country.
Yeah, I would say that's exactly right. Just in terms of CAP, we wanted to pace it to ensure the system integrity, and there was fairness in the process. Now, U.S. Bank, I don't know if you've talked to them recently or got any more information from them, but I understood them continuing as of last week to take in process applications. In terms of that aspect of pacing, it has slowed down the authorization of any one bank to get through. So to the extent that I would be patient, I would think that their cap is pretty high in terms of what they would have to achieve in terms of the authorizations. And I would expect that we're going to see some of this backlog clear, and we're going to see much more in the next few days of folks like yourself getting approved loans from big banks and medium-sized banks and small banks.
We sure hope that. I know you guys would love to see that, and I sure would love to see that backlog cleared and more PPP loans out into our communities. I want to just again thank the folks at SBA, Christopher and Ron and Godfrey, for participating and jumping on this call with us. It was great to hear their advice to our questions. I know these are difficult and unprecedented times for them and for all of the folks on the call. And working together, we can get through this. And I want to continue to be a voice for my community. So please feel free to let us know if you have additional questions or if there's things we should be working on. Aguilar.house.gov is again my website, 909-890-4445. Christopher, thank you so much to you and the team for always answering the phone when we call and for making yourselves available for things like this where we can reach. We had almost 200 folks on this call throughout the entire thing. So thank you guys so much.
Absolutely, Congressman Aguilar. Again, I want to thank you for taking the leadership role here and the initiative to convene this call. I also do want to say a quick hello on behalf of our director, Adalberto Quijada. He wanted me to extend his greetings to you, Congressman. He's doing double duty as the acting director in Puerto Rico as well, so he could not join us today, but he did want me to make sure I said hello on his behalf.
I appreciate it. Give him my best, and we know he's doing great work out there. So thank you guys so much for taking the time, and we will continue to post information and let us know if there's something we can be helpful with as well. Thank you guys so much, and everybody on the call. If we didn't get to you, please leave a voicemail. We'll get back to you. Thanks so much for taking the time.